Pause for a moment. This truth might unsettle you, it might shake you, but it is necessary. We rush through life with such noise in our hearts that we forget the weight of eternity pressing upon every breath we take. We treat the deepest realities as if they were casual suggestions, optional ideas we can rearrange whenever they feel inconvenient. But truth does not bend simply because we are uncomfortable. Truth stands immovable, and it demands that we stand before it honestly. Pause for a moment. This truth might confront you. You cannot outrun who you are, and you cannot hide from what your soul knows. We build images, reputations, excuses, and distractions, yet none of them can quiet the quiet voice inside that asks, "Is this all? Is this who you were meant to be?" That question is not there to condemn you. It is there to awaken you. Pause for a moment. This truth might humble you. Strength is not found in pretending you are enough. Strength is found in admitting you are not. When we finally come to the end of our own resources, when we finally see the thinness of our own power, that is when real transformation begins. Not in boasting, but in brokenness. Not in pride, but in surrender. Pause for a moment. This truth might free you. You are not made to drift aimlessly through your days. You are not made to be enslaved to the expectations of others or the fears within your own heart. You are created with purpose, with intention, with a calling far greater than the small stories this world tries to sell you. Pause for a moment. This truth might change you. Life is too brief to waste on shallow pursuits. Every moment is a gift. Every breath a reminder that you are here for something more than survival. Stop running from the voice that calls you higher. Stop settling for the comfort that numbs you. Rise. Step into the truth, even if it cuts, because it is the only thing that heals. Truth demands honest confrontation, and this reality stands like a mountain before every person who has ever tried to change, grow, or understand the deeper purpose of their existence. It is a force that does not yield to excuses, to half-hearted attempts, or to casual interest. Truth, by its very nature, pursues the human heart with a kind of relentless clarity, and when it finally catches up to us, it refuses to settle for superficial answers. Many spend their lives running from this confrontation because they sense, deep within, that if they truly paused long enough to face what is real, something in their lives would have to change. And change, especially the kind that starts at the core of one's being, is never comfortable. Truth is not concerned with preserving our pride. It is not interested in protecting the illusions we have built around ourselves. It is not swayed by the defenses we mount or the narratives we craft to justify our choices. Truth is unmoved by our attempts to soften it, reshape it, or make it more palatable. It stands firm, unaltered, demanding that we approach it with humility. When truth confronts us, it exposes the gap between who we pretend to be and who we truly are. It reveals the contradictions we tolerate, the compromises we ignore, and the quiet lies we whisper to ourselves to avoid discomfort. Most people live with an internal tension, a quiet unease that surfaces in moments of stillness. They sense that something is off, something unaligned, but rather than examining the source, they drown it out with noise, with busyness, with endless distraction. But truth is patient. It waits in the background of every decision, in the shadows of every unspoken thought. It is not diminished when we dismiss it. It simply waits for the moment when our defenses weaken enough for it to step forward again. Honest confrontation with truth begins with a willingness to stand still, to stop running long enough to look directly at what is real about life, about oneself, about the path one is walking. But this kind of stillness is rare. People fear what they might discover if they let the facade fall. They fear the possibility that they have been wrong, that they have built entire segments of their lives on unstable foundations. They fear that the image they have tried so hard to maintain might not survive an encounter with truth. But this fear, though powerful, is also deceptive. Truth confronts us not to shame us, but to free us from the weight of pretending. It calls us out of the small stories we tell ourselves and invites us into something far more authentic and far more demanding. It urges us to step away from the shallow expectations of others and step into the deeper reality of who we are meant to become. The first step in honest confrontation is acknowledgement. Acknowledging that there are things within us that need correction, realignment, or transformation. This acknowledgement is often the hardest part because it requires vulnerability. It requires admitting that we are not as strong, not as wise, not as put together as we want others to believe. It forces us to face aspects of ourselves that we would rather ignore, our insecurities, our fears, our hidden motives. Yet without acknowledgement, no genuine growth can occur. A person cannot heal what they refuse to admit is broken. The next step is humility, recognizing that truth stands above us, not below us. We do not define truth, we discover it. We do not mold it into a shape that suits our preferences, we allow it to reshape us. Humility opens the door for truth to enter because it dismantles the defenses that pride constructs. Pride insists that we are fine as we are, that change is unnecessary, that any challenge to our self-perception is an attack. Humility, however, understands that correction is not an assault but a gift. It welcomes the refining influence of truth because it recognizes the value of becoming more aligned with what is real. Another essential part of honest confrontation is courage. Courage to face what might be painful, what might require repentance, what might call for meaningful change. Truth often demands that we let go of comfortable but destructive patterns. It might require us to walk away from environments that are shaping us into someone we were never meant to be. It might demand that we repair relationships we have damaged or release relationships that are leading us astray. It might call us to abandon habits that numb our minds or cloud our judgment. Courage is necessary because truth rarely leaves a person unchanged, and change always carries a cost. In confronting truth, one must also embrace clarity, the clarity that truth provides when we finally stop resisting it. Clarity removes confusion and exposes the path forward. It cuts through the fog of indecision and reveals what truly matters. Most people live in a state of partial clarity, knowing enough to sense the direction they should take, but not enough to commit wholeheartedly. This partial clarity is often the result of selective acknowledgement, facing only the truths that are convenient while ignoring the ones that would require sacrifice. But truth operates as a whole, and it offers its greatest clarity only to those who are willing to embrace it completely. Clarity, however, is not the final destination. Truth demands alignment, bringing one's actions, decisions, and values into harmony with what has been revealed. Alignment is where transformation becomes visible. It is where the internal confrontation begins to reshape the external life. Many people reach the point of acknowledgement, humility, and even clarity, but they fall short of alignment because it requires consistent discipline. It requires integrating truth into daily choices, not just momentary realizations. Alignment demands perseverance because the world constantly pulls us back toward distraction, toward compromise, toward the comfort of old habits. But truth, once embraced, becomes a guiding force that strengthens resolve and sharpens focus. The confrontation with truth also requires a willingness to endure discomfort. Truth rarely affirms everything we want. It often contradicts what we desire in the moment. It may call us to step away from things that feel good but ultimately harm us. It may require us to resist the ease of conformity, and choose the harder path of integrity. Discomfort is not a sign that truth is wrong. It is a sign that truth is doing its work, pruning away the falsehoods that have wrapped themselves around our hearts. The discomfort of truth refines us, strengthens us, and prepares us for a life grounded not in illusion, but in conviction. Truth also demands consistency. A single moment of honest confrontation is not enough to sustain a life. Truth must be revisited, reaffirmed, and reapplied. The human heart drifts, memory fades, and the pressures of life push us toward compromise. Without consistent confrontation, truth becomes a distant memory rather than a present guide. Consistency keeps us grounded, reminding us of the commitments we have made and the person we aspire to become. It reinforces the transformation that has begun and prevents us from sliding back into old patterns of avoidance. And finally, truth demands responsibility. Once a person has encountered truth, they cannot remain passive. They are accountable for what they know. They cannot pretend ignorance or push aside what has been revealed. Responsibility means taking ownership of one's actions, choices, and direction. It means refusing to blame circumstances or other people for what is within one's control. It means embracing the role one plays in shaping their own life and future. Responsibility transforms knowledge into action and confrontation into meaningful change. To live in honest confrontation with truth is to live awake, fully aware of who you are and who you are becoming. It is to reject the ease of self-deception and choose the harder, nobler path of authenticity. It is to allow truth to strip away the layers of false identity until only what is real remains. It is to stand before truth without fear, because you understand that it does not come to condemn, but to liberate. It invites you into a life that is not built on fleeting emotions or shifting opinions, but on the solid foundation of what is undeniably real. Truth demands honest confrontation because anything less leaves us trapped in the smallness of our own illusions. It calls us to rise, to awaken, to become more than what comfort and complacency would allow. It presses upon us the weight of responsibility, the beauty of clarity, and the power of transformation. And though the confrontation may be intense, even painful at times, it is the very process by which a person becomes who they were truly meant to be. Strength comes through humility and surrender, though everything in our nature initially argues against this truth. We grow up believing strength is found in proving ourselves, asserting ourselves, defending our pride, and hiding our weaknesses. We are taught that power comes from self-reliance, from projecting confidence, from achieving enough so that no one can question our worth. But real strength, the kind that endures when the world shakes and the soul is tested, does not grow in the soil of arrogance or self-sufficiency. Real strength comes from a deeper place, a quieter place, a place the world overlooks, the place where a person admits they cannot carry the weight of life alone. Humility is not weakness, it is honesty. It is the courage to see ourselves as we truly are, not as we pretend to be, not as others assume we are, not as our pride wants people to believe, but as we actually stand. Humility strips away the polished image, the rehearsed answers, the defenses we use to shield ourselves from discomfort. It invites us to acknowledge our limits, our flaws, our failures, and our need for help. People fear humility because they assume it will diminish them, as if admitting weakness makes them less valuable. But humility does not shrink a person, it grounds them. It frees them from the exhausting task of pretending to be more than they are. Strength rooted in humility is unshakable because it is built on truth. A humble person is not undone by criticism because they do not rely on the illusion of perfection for their identity. They are not threatened by correction because they understand that growth requires confronting what is wrong, not defending it. They are not overwhelmed by the weight of expectation because they know they do not stand by their own power alone. Humility creates inner stability because the person is no longer holding themselves up through pride. They are standing on something far more reliable. Humility, however, is only the first element. The second is surrender, a word that modern culture despises because it sounds like defeat. But surrender is not defeat when its object is truth. Surrender is freedom from the prison of self-reliance. It is the recognition that our own strength, no matter how much we possess, is insufficient to deal with the deepest challenges of life. The human heart was not made to navigate this world isolated, driven by ego, or guided purely by personal ambition. Surrender allows us to release the illusion of control, to acknowledge that we cannot manage everything, fix everything, or force everything to comply with our expectations. There is a unique kind of peace that comes when a person surrenders the battles they were never meant to fight alone. Many individuals carry crushing burdens not because they must, but because pride refuses to let go. Pride insists, I can handle this, I don't need help, I can figure it out. But that pride becomes a chain around the heart, dragging it deeper into exhaustion and despair. Surrender is the moment when a person unclenches their fists, stops resisting, and allows themselves to be guided, strengthened, or corrected by something beyond themselves. Surrender is not laziness, it is alignment with truth. Strength that comes from surrender is not loud, it does not boast, it does not display itself for attention, it is quiet, steady, and resilient. It allows a person to endure storms without collapsing, not because they are powerful in themselves, but because they know where their strength truly lies. The surrendered person is not easily shaken by circumstances because their stability does not depend on circumstances. They have placed their trust elsewhere, somewhere unchanging, steady, and strong. Humility and surrender work together like two parts of the same transformation. Humility reveals your limits. Surrender invites a greater strength into those limits. Humility breaks the illusion of self-sufficiency. Surrender replaces that illusion with genuine power. Humility says, I am not enough on my own. Surrender says, and I don't have to be. Together, they form the foundation for a life marked not by fear or insecurity, but by confidence rooted in something deeper than personal ability. People often resist humility because they fear what others will think of them. They resist surrender because they fear losing control. But what they do not realize is that pride and control are the very things weakening them. Pride isolates a person because it refuses help, correction, or vulnerability. The isolated heart grows brittle, easily broken. Control exhausts a person because it demands that they hold together a world they are not capable of managing. The exhausted heart grows weary, easily overwhelmed. Humility and surrender do the opposite. They strengthen a person by connecting them to a source of power beyond themselves. Many spend their lives clinging tightly to their own strength, refusing to let anyone see their cracks. They believe vulnerability makes them fragile, when in reality, hiding their weaknesses is what keeps them fragile. Vulnerability, guided by humility, opens the door for wisdom, support, healing, and growth. No one becomes wise without correction. No one becomes strong without admitting weakness. No one becomes whole without acknowledging their broken places. Strength grows when a person stops pretending they are flawless. At the heart of humility is truthfulness. A humble person does not lie to themselves about their abilities or their failures. They do not inflate their accomplishments to feel secure or hide their struggles to protect their image. They are honest not only with others but with themselves. This honesty becomes the soil in which strength takes root. A dishonest heart cannot grow because it is too busy protecting illusions. A truthful heart grows because it is willing to be shaped, taught, challenged, and transformed. Surrender, likewise, requires trust. It requires believing that letting go of pride and control will not destroy you, but free you. It requires believing that you will not fall apart if you stop pretending to be stronger than you are. It requires believing that the foundation you rest upon is strong enough to hold you even when you admit your weakness. Surrender is an act of courage, not cowardice. It takes tremendous bravery to stop fighting battles fueled by pride and to begin fighting battles guided by truth. Those who embrace humility and surrender discover a strength that surprises them. They find they are not as easily shaken by the opinions of others. They are not as consumed by fear of failure. They are not devastated when things do not go their way. They become stable because their identity is no longer built on fragile foundations. They are not constantly trying to prove themselves, so they are not constantly anxious about being exposed. They are not carrying burdens alone, so they are not constantly overwhelmed. Strength built on humility is compassionate because it understands weakness in others. Pride is judgmental because it must look down on others to feel superior. Humility, however, sees truth, not only in oneself, but in the human condition. It recognizes that everyone struggles, everyone fails, everyone has blind spots and limitations. This recognition produces patience and empathy. A humble person does not need to tear others down to feel secure. Their security comes from truth, not comparison. Strength built on surrender is peaceful because it is not constantly fighting for control. A surrendered person does not panic when plans change or when life becomes unpredictable. They understand that control is an illusion, and releasing that illusion frees the soul from constant tension. They are able to adapt, adjust, and trust even in uncertainty. This kind of peace is powerful, not passive. It enables a person to make decisions with clarity instead of fear, to act with courage instead of desperation. Humility also opens the door to wisdom. Pride closes the mind. A proud person cannot learn because they believe they already know. They cannot accept guidance because they believe they are self-sufficient. They cannot grow because they refuse correction. Humility removes these barriers. It creates a teachable spirit, a heart that is willing to listen, to receive truth even when it stings, and to change direction when necessary. Wisdom grows in such a heart, and with wisdom comes strength, the strength to choose well, to see clearly, to walk steadily. Surrender deepens this wisdom by aligning a person with purpose rather than impulse. When someone surrenders pride and self-will, their decisions become more grounded, more intentional, more aligned with truth rather than emotion. Their priorities shift. They begin to see beyond momentary pleasure or personal ambition. They gain perspective that keeps them from being driven by fear or blinded by desire. Strength built on surrender is not easily manipulated by circumstances because it is anchored in something deeper. In the end, the paradox becomes clear. The strongest people are those who have learned to bow. They bow not in defeat, but in recognition that strength does not originate from within the human ego. The strongest people are those who have laid down the exhausting burden of self-exaltation. They have embraced humility not as humiliation, but as liberation. They have surrendered not as an escape from responsibility, but as a step into genuine clarity and direction. Strength comes through humility and surrender because these two virtues strip away everything that weakens the soul: pride, fear, self-reliance, the need for control, and replace them with stability, honesty, wisdom, and a foundation that does not collapse under pressure. Those who walk in humility do not crumble under the weight of failure. Those who live in surrender do not break under the strain of life's uncertainties. It is in humility that we find clarity. It is in surrender that we find peace. And it is in the combination of both that we discover a strength deeper, steadier, and more enduring than anything pride or self-reliance could ever produce.